Hello and welcome to another edition of Angelenos Building Community. Today I have the pleasure of talking to Christian Lamont from Latino Outdoors. Christian, thank you so much for talking with me today. How are you?
I'm doing as well as we all can be during this weird summer.
Yeah, agreed. Christian, before we jump right into our conversation, I did want to read a little bit about your bio because you do so much on the LA level and just in your personal life. And I wanted to give anyone watching a sense of why I'm always so excited to work with you and when our paths cross. So I'm just going to read a little bit about your background before we jump in. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Christian Lamont is a storyteller, scribbler, community organizer, volunteer, activist, and environmental advocate. He was born in Mexico City, Mexico, and is at home in Los Angeles. When not staying at home during a pandemic, you can usually find Christian introducing families to outdoor activities, attending a community meeting, volunteering as a poll worker, or marching for a cause he believes in. Currently, Christian is involved in local and environmental initiatives, including Cradle Los Angeles, Our Water LA, and Environmental Professionals of Color Los Angeles. Above all, Christian believes in the power of caring. Christian, your background is so impressive. There are things that I know that this bio doesn't even cover. I wish that we could talk to you again and again about the work that you do. But of course, today we're really focused on what you do with Latino Outdoors. So if we can, I want to start there. Can you tell us a little bit about the mission of Latino Outdoors, kind of at the national level?
Sure. Okay, so the mission statement, and its bare bones, is Latino Outdoors inspires, connects, and engages Latino communities, Latinx communities in the outdoors. And we embrace cultura and family as a part of the outdoor narrative, ensuring our history, heritage, and leadership are valued and represented. So to take that a step further, what does outdoors mean? So it doesn't always have to be this grandiose Yosemite style epic adventure. Our epic adventures can be found here in an urban environment in Los Angeles. And so, yes, it is getting people outdoors. It is encouraging Latinx representation in the outdoor narrative, but it's also about redefining what outdoors is and how we can encourage and foster a new culture of stewardship within the Latinx and our allies communities.
I love that, especially as someone that grew up here in Los Angeles. It can sometimes feel like when you say outdoors, you have to take this huge trip and like gather all your supplies. And I love that you all are so focused on what you can do kind of in your own backyard and building up those connections that our communities already have. So I love that so much. And then Christian, I know because we've worked together in the past. I guess the first time our paths crossed was actually at the Natural History Museum here in Los Angeles. I know that before you became a staff member for the national organization, you were hyper focused on Latino Outdoors in LA.
Sure. One of the most fun things about Los Angeles is that despite the reputation everybody has, thinks about with LA, oh, it's this glitz and glamour, or it's all freeways and highways. There is so much open and green space here in the city. I think back to like one of my first hikes with Latino Outdoors founder Jose Gonzalez. He took us to the Baldwin Hills Scenic Overlook, and a lot of people were wearing their athleisure wear, the running shoes and all those things. I showed up just regular tennis shoes, jeans, super hot day, kind of regretted it. But so we went up to the top of the overlook, and Jose, like, it's this beautiful panorama, if you haven't been there, 360-degree view of Los Angeles, LA County, and of the ocean. And so he kind of, in his wise Jose kind of way, and patient, he said, "What do you see out there?" And everybody, smart Alex, sarcasm, highway, freeway, smog, traffic, parking tickets, those things. And Jose kind of like the mentor he is, he said, "Look harder," and challenged us all to look a little bit deeper at the landscape, and he started pointing out, he said, that's a city park, that's a county park, that's a national forest, that is a park under development, that is a state park. Then we turned around, started looking at the ocean. He said, that's a national marine sanctuary. Those over there are national parks. And we did a 360-degree view. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that at the end of that 360-degree view, there's about 20 of us all kind of making a big circle up on the top of this hill, people looking at us. And at the end of that 360-degree circle, we really all looked at LA through a different lens. We saw opportunity, we saw green, we saw the many places that can be enjoyed, and the concrete and those kinds of elements just kind of faded away. It's not that they weren't there, but the green and the patches of brown suddenly became so much more apparent and so much more obvious. So with that got me really encouraged to deal with Latino outdoors in a different point of view. You know, a lot of people are focused with going out to the forest, and it was really about rediscovering or exploring what's already here in Los Angeles. And so through that kind of work, it was the challenge of taking public transportation. If we invite people on a trail, can everybody get to that trail, car or not? Once we get to that trail, is that trail accessible? And so it's easy to say, take a transit to trails, for example. Take a bus to a trail. But then when you actually spend those 2 hours getting to that trail, and then you're getting back, you know, home way after dark, suddenly it's an 8-hour day just to go to a trail. So these kinds of things informed the kinds of activities we were doing and how we invited people to join us on the trail. So, so within that, I found an amazing network, a community of like-minded outdoors enthusiasts, conservationists, and advocates. And that's honestly where the fun began. That's when you start learning all the hard work that's going on to bring more people to the outdoors, to preserve and expand open spaces here within the city and within the counties.
Thank you. And I love what you were saying about kind of that shift in perspective when you're up on that overlook, because I agree. Like, the first thing that you're going to see in Los Angeles is buildings. And it took me a long time to see that, like, in between all of that concrete, there are these green spaces. And those are worth exploring. And so I love that Latino Outdoors in LA helps people maybe shift that perspective. And you brought up this idea of community, right? That when you find like-minded people, you're able to have these experiences. Can you share a little bit about how you've helped to build a community here in LA?
Sure. I would say the first thing is that people just like to be invited. And also in Los Angeles, it's an observation I've just had, and I've made a couple of times on the trail. But people in LA during more regular times, they enjoy their Dodgers, they enjoy their barbecues, and they enjoy hiking. You know, you go out to a lot of these trails on the weekend and they are packed with families. You go out into creeks or rivers, and there are a lot of people there. So I think the main part of creating that community is letting them all know that we're going out. That's the first step. You know, hey, we're heading here, there's a group. And I honestly had never gone on group hikes before Latino Outdoors. I was just like, I don't want to, I'm unsure. I like to take my pace, I like to take my time. And one of the fun things about Latino Outdoors is, and those hikes, is that it is a hike. You do get in your steps, but it's also a bit of an experience. You learn things. You go with a little bit of purpose. You take something away from it. And along the way, on these trails, in these campfires, you start meeting people and you start connecting and you share stories, and then you see each other again. And then you say, hey, well, how are you doing? Oh, well, what can I help you with? And then suddenly like the mechanisms of building community start showing up. And so it is. And then you find yourself going to this local meeting and learning, oh, well, this community is fighting for this. Or you go to that happy hour and you learn, oh, well, these colleagues are talking about this. And suddenly you find the intersections with the outdoors and social justice and environmental justice and community health are really, really apparent. And again, Los Angeles is a place that that it's about opportunity. And so when you're creating these kinds of events and you invite people to them, you suddenly meet these community organizers, these advocates, these passionate hikers who want to do more and take it to the next step. And before you know it, you find yourself in the middle of this beautiful community that cares and wants to bring other people with them and uplift each other.
One thing that you said was that when you bring people together, it's an opportunity for learning, right? Is there anything that the community has taught you in your experience?
Absolutely, every day. And it goes from, what bird is this? You know, it was always, you see a hawk and you're like, oh, wow, it does the bird sound. And then you find out it's a red-tailed hawk. You're looking at that flower. Oh, well, that's actually purple sage. Those kinds of, you know, upfront naturalist and observation-based things. But then there are other deeper issues that you learn about. For example, you know, in the South Bay and Wilmington area, there, you know, you tell people, go outdoors, it's healthy. And that's not entirely true for everybody. And then it's, you know, asthma and community health kind of problems from exposure to chemicals and pollution that you find out, you know, the more you talk to people, that like, oh, well, I haven't actually had too much clean air when I go outside to play or go outside to the outdoors. And so then you have it informs how you frame things, and you try to be a little bit more intentional, a little bit more careful and meaningful about how you frame these things. Transportation is another issue that I learned about, that you know, there's this wonderful Latino Outdoors volunteer and EPOC LA member and Nature for All employee and 818 hiker, I think you know who I'm talking about, Araceli Hernandez. And she's fantastic. I've learned so much from her, and she's, I think, just scratching her 20s. And for example, when I talk about transit to trails, they are usually well-meaning programs. They say, we will make a shuttle program with public transportation that will get you near a trail. So in theory, you can go to a train or bus station, travel a certain distance, and be dropped off within walking kind of distance of a trail. Araceli has done a fantastic job of actually taking that into, you know, taking that information, really testing it out. So when you say, oh, the bus drops you near the trail, Araceli will be the first to be like, does it really? I've actually done that, and it does, and it's not that easy. And so it's kind of a grassroots effort that she's done, but she created a zine, you know, a little pamphlet that she printed out, wrote out all by herself with a bunch of tips. So you as you hike and as you talk, you learn. And that's just a beautiful byproduct of this community building, of this outdoor world that Los Angeles has to offer. Like, not just the trails, not just the hidden open spaces, but also the wonderful people that you share them with.
Yeah, I think it's so important to have those conversations, right? Because I think as outdoor enthusiasts and lovers, it can be so easy or tempting to want to share your love with other people and just say like, get out there and do all of these things. It'll be great. But it's so, so valuable to hear about the barriers and the challenges and really make sure that what you're offering to people is relevant and accessible. And so, yeah, having those conversations is the only way to make sure that you can do this work with intention, like you said. At the end there, you brought it back to living in Los Angeles and being in Los Angeles. And I know just from knowing you and from reading your bio that you were born in Mexico City. And then I think you've mentioned that you grew up in Colorado, right? A little bit. But now you're here in Los Angeles. And so I'm curious, what does being an Angeleno mean to you with all of your prior experience and all that? What does it mean to live in Los Angeles now?
Well, it's interesting you ask, because Los Angeles was the first U.S. city that my family lived in when we came over from Mexico City, '84 at the Olympics, to date myself, and so, you know, we went to Colorado, and it was incredibly isolating, and you feel your culture isn't, you know, you don't see people like yourself, you don't hear your language being spoken, you don't see like-minded kind of cultural celebrations even. You know, you're the only one kind of, should I be embarrassed about this? Should I be proud of my heritage? And then a wonderful homecoming, like coming back to Los Angeles. And you're like, yes, I'm home. This is what I thought community should be like. And I've said this to my parents a couple of times, that I feel in my heart that in one way or the other, that Los Angeles is one of the most positive representations of the Latinx culture, because there are so many different examples. You know, you've got people from El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Puerto Rico, Mexico, everywhere, South America, Central America, the Caribbean, and at that, we all kind of encourage each other, and we share art, and we share food, and we share issues and passions. And so there's this beautiful celebration of individuality, but also community and culture. So to me, you know, one of the things about being an Angeleno and Angeleno is people show up. That is something that I've really learned and appreciated so much. You know, we show up to each other's events in support. We show up to hikes, again, we show up to those barbecues, to Dodgers games, but we also show up to protests. We show up to civic engagements. We show up to Board of Supervisor hearings that are about water proposals and propositions that are coming up for a vote. So really being an Angeleno is about showing up, and it's about celebrating the individual and the culture of us all.
One thing that you did say too was that a little bit of your time in Colorado was somewhat isolating. And I think that what is so impressive to me about Latino Outdoors is that it is a national organization. And so what I think is important for maybe people to know is that there might be a Latino Outdoors chapter near you if you want to find that community or kind of build that community. So I'm curious, is there a way for people to find that easily, for them to get in touch with Latino Outdoors in an easy way?
Absolutely, and it's getting easier by the day. Despite COVID and the fact that we had to put a suspension to all of our outdoor programming, our virtual programming continues. And though it is a transition or an evolution of sorts, because now we're making things a little bit more accessible to people. You don't have to go onto a trail to feel a sense of community. You don't have to be on that 2-hour bus ride to get to the trail. The hike to get to the hike is what I called it. But it's through our online events, including, you know, initiatives like Together Apart, which is exactly that. We're together, but we're apart. storytelling initiatives like Yo Cuento, which any storyteller can submit their blog to be featured on our website and our social media. And then the power of social media. A lot of people say, oh, the outdoor, social media is ruining the outdoors. And we have found that to be completely opposite of how it is. It's allowed people to connect. And so, for example, if you are in the East Coast, we used to have one chapter in New York City. Well, now we have a chapter in New York City, in Connecticut, in DC, and we're starting a new chapter in Massachusetts. There's also one in Pennsylvania. We have a chapter in Arkansas. We have a chapter in, Portland and Bend, Oregon, in Denver, Colorado. We just had one in Salt Lake City, Texas. So you see all these start to spring up, and it is as easy as going online and typing in Latino Outdoors. And then you'll see the website, and then you'll see the teams, and then you get curious, well, is there something near me? And you'll find, that's not necessarily static. It keeps growing, and that's a beautiful thing. So yeah, hashtag Latino Outdoors or Latino Outdoors on Google is a great way, and that's huge growth. Because one of the stories that our founder, Jose, always talks about is that when he started this whole thing, he looked up on Google Latino Outdoors about 10 years ago, and nothing came up. There was no space that was carved out for that. There was no outdoor affinity space for Latinx people. And so the fact that almost 10 years later, you can look that up and find multiple regions and multiple ways to connect, I think is a testament to the work of every volunteer, every follower, every volunteer leader, every staff member, and our entire community that shares and encourages this growth, organic, beautiful growth.
Yeah, I mean, talk about showing up, right? That's showing up in a big way and making it super easy for people to find connection. And speaking of online connection, I'm so happy that we had this opportunity to talk, Christian. I'm so lucky to be able to work with you in a lot of different capacities, and also to be able to call you a friend. I love the work that you're doing with Latino Outdoors, and I just support you and everything else that you have done in the past and that you'll continue to do. Thanks so much for talking with me today, Christian. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Absolutely. You too, Michelle.